Hey, good Wednesday evening, everybody. It's Chief Meteorologist Brad Petovich here. We are in live weather impact here for a Wednesday evening on February 11th, 2026, and what a beautiful day it was. Told you it was going to start kind of gray and cloudy. Didn't have much rain. I did not have any rain in my house. I saw some dampness out there. I think it was more ground sweat than anything because it was kind of warm, more humid, and the ground is still really, really cold right now. But the afternoon turned out fabulous. In fact, we had a gorgeous sunset this evening. Still got that golden hour glow going on out there. Sunset this evening was at 6:02 p.m. And with the high clouds, low sun angle, boy, do you get some beautiful views. You can see Spencer Mountain off in the distance there. We're looking over Charlotte Douglas International. So every once in a while, you'll see a plane come by there. We did clear out. If you were out early today, you probably said, hey, it was cloudy and gray, but about 2 o'clock is when the sun broke out here. I know areas north it broke out a lot sooner than that. And that late day sun and the later sunset did allow for temperatures to warm up pretty nicely. Here we are after sunset, and we're still in the 60s out there. 62 currently here in Charlotte. I'll show you some other temperatures at the bottom of the hour. 40s in the mountains, some 50s showing up. The wind has shifted to the north, so technically some cooler air moving in, but we'll call it seasonably cool tonight, and tomorrow doesn't look bad at all. The high temperature today, yeah, we hit 70 again, second day in a row, but today, unlike yesterday, it started warm, near 60 in the morning. So today was by far the warmest day from an average standpoint than we have seen since, I think, January 23rd is the last time we had a day above average like we did today. Yesterday's 30 in the morning definitely set us back. And just to give you some perspective, this is based on, these are the temperatures tonight into tomorrow morning. I'll show you those quickly. I kind of jumped the gun here. But most for our low to mid 30s, some 20s in the mountains, so a cool start. This is what I was referring to. Looking back at the last 31 days, this is the average departure for high temperature only, does not include the low temperature. So the high temperature yesterday, obviously 73 was way above average, but you can see it had been a while since we had a day above average for a high. Last week we had one day near average, right on 55. That was the day, that was last Friday, I believe. I remember that day because it was really nice out. Power washed a lot of the salt residue off everything in my house. But you can see you have to go all the way back into January, like the 23rd or so, before you see temperatures that were actually above average. Tomorrow, technically above average, not as warm as the last 2 days, but we'll still be up around 60, 61, some low 60s out there. And with full sunshine, honestly, should feel pretty good. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to see the warming trend continue, obviously, with warmer conditions heading our way. I did want to show you the drought monitor because I feel like sometimes we always have to reiterate this. We are in a severe to moderate drought. In the winter, it is super hard to tell when you're in severe to moderate drought because nothing's growing, not because it's dead, it's dormant, right? Your trees don't have leaves, you don't have gardens going, your grass is dormant. You're not in the pool, you're not watering things, it's not hot, so you're just not using water, you're not noticing as much. But if you live on a lake or a stream, you probably notice how low the water flow is right now and the water levels. And if you look at some of the rainfall amounts over the last 3 months, I did today, it has been incredibly arid. I mean, it's just, if we had stuff growing and high evaporation rates, just your lawn growing alone would be using an inch of rain per week that we don't have. It would be bone dry. So a lot of folks will say, hey, Brad, how could it be dry? My yard is muddy. Remember, that's just sitting in the topsoil. Your grass isn't using any of it. Evaporation rates are low. So there's very little water in your soil. It just feels like there's a lot more than there is. Because trust me, once the growing season starts, that little bit of mud is gone because your grass uses it up and then everything goes dormant pretty quickly. So we got to change this pattern before the growing season gets going in the spring. So typically spring's a wet time of year. March is pretty wet. April can be. May can be at times. So hopefully we start to see some changes here. And we start to see some signs of wetter weather this weekend. Saturday for Valentine's Day. You got plans with your wife, your sweetheart, your significant other. Should be fine, okay? We're going to have dry conditions, I think all the way through dinner time now. The rain doesn't really arrive until early Sunday morning after midnight. The rain looks pretty much on and off all day. I don't want to call it a complete washout, but it's pretty close, right? It's going to rain most of the daylight hours, so pretty soggy pattern. I'm also keeping an eye on Daytona because Sunday, Daytona 500, starts at 2:30. Hopefully it gets started on time. I will say I want it to start on time because this rain is coming in later in the day down there. I'm going to kind of go down there and show you. This is 12 o'clock. You could see the main rain band still back to the west. So hopefully this thing continues to slow down, or it could be a long Sunday at Daytona, maybe even into Monday. So we'll keep an eye on that because that is a big, big race. And usually with all the fanfare, 2:30 is optimistic for a start time because Usually there's so many stuff going on before that it just drags on. So the washout index, no issues at all Saturday, not even hit or miss. Sunday, right on the edge of a washout. So widespread to washout certainly looks like a soaker of a day. And speaking of that, how much rain could we conceivably see? Well, I think it's really going to be a pretty significant soaker if this track continues through Sunday night into Monday morning. I'll stop it right there. You could see widespread 1 inch rainfall everywhere, with some areas around 1.5 inches. So that is exactly what the doctor ordered for the drought, also for cleaning your car, washing away all the salt residue and brine, and also melting whatever snow piles are left. We've got some big nasty ones left over in our parking lot, and I know a lot of parking lots, especially north, have big piles of snow full of all kinds of dirt. So we'd love to get that stuff washed off. So your weekend forecast: Saturday, looking good. Sunday, not so great, but hey, we need the rain. Stay home, watch Daytona 500, enjoy a good day inside. Your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast shows pretty mild weather. In fact, Sunday's the only day where it's somewhat cool, below average. Every other day should be above average. So the warm conditions continue. In fact, we go 10 days into the future, and next week is trending even warmer. We're looking at highs upper 60s, low 70s by Tuesday, Wednesday. And then look at Thursday, Friday. I am off Friday, thank goodness. 75 degrees. Man, if the courses were in great shape, I'd be out playing some golf. But got to get that grass growing first, though. But yeah, definitely some warm weather next week and relatively dry, unfortunately. That's the other thing I noticed. I'm looking there. I just told you about the drought, and while we do have rain Sunday, the fact that that's the only day in the next 10 days, not a really good sign. So we'll talk about this winter with Tim Buckley. We'll talk about the warm-up. We'll talk about the melt, which is going on, and among other things that we'll talk about coming up in 2 minutes. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY, chief meteorologist up there, Tim. And actually, we were just talking about today, ended up being a pretty nice day down here. We actually hit 70 again, but the morning low was not 30, it was 59. So today was actually, from an average standpoint, was actually a whole lot warmer than yesterday. The morning clouds, and really we didn't get any rain here. I don't know what you guys got. The radar looked way more impressive than whatever fell, because it was pretty dry at most of our reporting stations. But the afternoon turned out pretty nice. To have 2 days of 70 plus has been pretty nice after the winter we just had.
It's kind of funny because, Brad, around here anyway, the next couple of days for us, we're going to be a little close to average. So like low 30s and low 50s. And I was kind of making a joke. We haven't had anything near average for a while. We've either been way colder than average, and then the last 2 days way above average. So we're kind of settling into a little bit of a normalcy, at least for a couple of days. But yeah, you're right. Around here, it was super warm today yet again. We were in the 60s, had a couple brief showers in the morning. It's amazing. We talked about how the snow wasn't melting, and we showed you the satellite pictures. Yeah. We showed you the real pictures from the park. We're getting a lesson up here of the best way to melt snow is not just to have warm weather. That's good. Yeah. But you want to have warm weather all the way through the night, too.
Yes.
Because then you don't have any refreezing.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop the melting process. It just keeps going. Yeah. We also had dew points in the upper 40s to right around 50. And when you get that high dew point air, you're actually causing condensation to happen on top of that snow. So you're really accelerating the melting process, and almost everything is gone. So all those pictures from yesterday, basically everything is gone at this point. Looks like where's our lovely snowbanks in Kannapolis? Looks
Someone
like they're
parked on top
almost
of
about
it.
Gone.
It got ran over by a white pickup truck. It's still there, but somebody wanted that parking spot back. That's the unfortunate thing about snow piles. They do take up parking spots because there's nowhere to put it. And so this person decided, you know what? I got a big old truck. Looks like a Ford there. I'm just going to park on top of it. So it definitely shrank enough to drive over, which is great. But you make a good point, Tim. I've said this too. These overnight lows, that it's funny. That's what melts snow. And if you're a gardener or a landscaper, that's also what warms up your soil temperature. It's more the overnight lows that start kick the growing season going than the daytime highs. We could have really warm, sunny days, but if it doesn't stay warm at night, your grass won't start turning green until you have consistently like 50 degrees or higher at night. And so that's really what drives soil temp. But it works for snow too. It does the same thing. It kind of does the work. And I love your before and after picture here because that's pretty amazing. That's a lot of melting in a short period of time there.
It was really impressive, and I was kind of on a little bit of a mission today. I kind of did the same route, and I was like, let me kind of get the same views and the same angles around the area. So that was one.
Wow.
Here's another, just kind of looking at a forest. And this was mostly icy, sleety residue still, and it just got vaporized pretty clearly. So it's pretty much all gone. I don't think too many folks in Greensboro are sad to see it go. We had our fun. It's been a long time, and I think we're kind of getting used to that. There are some pains living with that stuff for a while. You mentioned the parking lots, but the school delays and the like. We're kind of turning the page.
Yeah, the other thing is, these big piles, when they're melting, they're putting off water. And so you're like, if you washed your car, you're like, I don't want to drive through a nasty puddle of melted snow. It's like it's not raining, so why should I be driving through puddles? So we still have puddles in places because the snow piles are still melting. So, it'll be interesting to continue to melt that as we go. Tim, yesterday we were talking about this a little bit, and I showed you a couple products. We were talking about the severity of the winter. And the Midwest Climate Center has a really cool product, which it's pretty fascinating. It shows basically, tries to gauge your severity of your winter season. And this index it's called Accumulated, I'm going to make sure I pronounce this correctly or get it correctly. It's the Accumulated Winter Season Severity Index. And so what it does, it tries to look at the severity of the winter by looking at the persistence and intensity of cold, the amount of snow, but I thought this was interesting. The amount and persistence of snow on the ground is a big part of this calculation. And in both of our areas, Tim, we are in what would be classified severe. And if you think about what we had talked about, what made it so unique the last couple of weeks, it was the longevity. The fact that it was cold for so long and we had back-to-back storms and snow and ice is still on the ground, as you showed in a few spots. So it kind of makes sense based on those criteria that we would end up in the severe range. But what I did find interesting too, last year we were in the severe range, and people already forget about last winter. We had a pretty good cold snap in January, and we had a couple snow events. But just like this year, I was looking back at last February, which blew my mind because I saw a record from last year. We hit 80 degrees twice in early February in Charlotte last year. But by the 20th and 19th, we had snow and cold again. So it's a good reminder that even if we get 80 or really warm like we are now, it doesn't always mean we're done. But it is interesting, back-to-back winters being classified as severe. What were your thoughts on on that. And does that make sense that it would be severe for both Greensboro and Charlotte?
Well, I think it's nice to have something that is a little less subjective and a little bit more objective and kind of based on something. When you were explaining this to me yesterday, I thought it's kind of similar to what we do with hurricane season.
Yeah.
Because we have something called ACE, where we're judging, how long have there been hurricanes active and how strong have they been, and they're accumulating energy all the way throughout. This is kind of similar, doing it with the cold and the snow and the sleet and the snow depth, all of those things. But to me, I think this makes sense because living through this, there's been a lot of daily life disruption to us in the North Carolina area, especially backloaded over those last couple of weeks. So if you look at the chart, we were actually kind of more so in that moderate category through the middle of January.
Got a steep curve there.
And then for both of our areas, we went right up there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me, Brad, and I think I mentioned this to you as well, if we get nothing the rest of the way, we'll still finish out pretty much in that severe category, so to speak. So you compare this to like the most recent years, it looks like 2017, 2018 was maybe the most similar to this year in terms of impact. And if you go back farther than that, 2014's on the list and some other ones as well. But it's been an impactful winter, and I think this does make some sense for North Carolina. It's a very cool product.
Yeah, it is really cool. I do like it because you're right. It's like what we call a hurricane season ACE. It's accumulated cyclone energy. It takes into account not how many storms, but how strong they are for how long, basically. And I think that's a really good metric. Now, Tim, you put a poll up for people to vote on this because I'm always fascinated, too, from the social science standpoint of this. We can give you a bunch of data, but what do you think it was been like? I mean, I think it's always interesting with the public. We talked about reality versus, perception and reality, but sometimes it is interesting to see how people think about the weather more than what it actually was. So James has got it pulled up there. James, you got to vote so we can see this total.
I know. I got.
So are you going to cheat and use the data, or are you actually going to use your?
I'm going to use the data because that feels like the safest thing. So I'm going to hit severe.
Severe. Okay. Let's see what the.
Here are the results, Tim, of your survey.
Well, that kind of checks out. That's really interesting.
So the public agrees in a severe winter overall right now, but it is skewed a little bit more toward moderate. It only allows you 4 choices, so I wasn't able to put average on here. I did try and keep the words basically the same, just out of curiosity to see what people would suggest. Now, this is Twitter, or X as we call it now.
Yeah.
And in my experience, Brad, maybe you agree, X is very heavy on winter weather lovers and weather lovers in general. So this is not a broad-based man-on-the-street poll necessarily. No. So I think if you're a snow lover or if you're a winter lover, you might say, I want even more. This is only just moderate. So that's kind of my interpretation of it, but I thought it was interesting to see what people might have to say.
Scientifically, it kind of checks out because, like you said, if we don't get another lick of winter weather, we'll probably end up right on the edge of severe, but we could be close to average. So it kind of makes sense. We're right there where the data is. What I find is interesting, when we look at the map, they have a cool map, too, on their site that shows, like, the stations individually, and they're color-coded. So Greensboro, Charlotte, it looks like Greenville, Spartanburg, and Asheville all had severe winter so far. But Raleigh has been considered average, which makes me think that the lack of snow that they missed
when they got robbed,
they got kind of dry slotted there, might have skewed the numbers for them because everybody else is either extreme, because Lumberton is extreme and Wilmington is extreme, which makes sense because they got crazy snow. But when you widen the map out, Tim, you could see this has been a very East Coast winter. You go in the middle of the country out west, and it's all been mild. It's been kind of an interesting map to look at, and it kind of checks out with the pattern that we've had this winter.
It does, and it did mention in the methodology, I think it said it doesn't really do a good job of waiting for freezing rain events or ice events necessarily, so that would kind of leave Nashville as a big omission here. Obviously, they've had a horrible time the last couple of weeks, but it only shows them as being average. But you're right about Raleigh. That's interesting. But anyway, what you just said about the West Coast missing out, and the East Coast really getting it. That, to me, is a big sign of kind of where we might be going over the next couple of weeks. I don't always buy that much into long-range forecasting or long-range model trends necessarily, but just, from a pendulum standpoint, considering the pendulum has been swung so far toward the east this winter, I just tend to think that it's got to swing back toward the west a little bit over the next couple of weeks, and that would lend itself toward us being a little warmer than average to finish out February.
Yeah, you would think we've had pretty persistent blocking over the North Atlantic, which kind of locked this pattern. That block isn't going to go on forever, right? It's eventually going to break down. And I tell you what, the West, and not only have they missed out, as a big skier, I follow a lot of the ski resorts out west, and it's some of the worst conditions I've seen for this late in the winter in areas like around Utah, Colorado. The only areas that have done pretty well have been parts of the Sierra, just because they've had a couple atmospheric river events that have just been like one and dones. But I mean, like Park City, I follow a couple accounts there, and people are really mad because they're paying $300 for a lift ticket and they're skiing on dirt, which is not great. So it'll be interesting to see if the pattern flips, because one of the best times to ski out west actually is late winter and spring, because they tend to get some of their best snow. And I think this year might be prime example of that. So you have the pattern flips here, and you look at the long range, as you mentioned, there are real signs that pattern is flipping quite a bit, and we're starting to see maybe the warmer trend sticking for us. The one thing we haven't seen, Tim, and we'll talk a lot about this tomorrow when the drought monitor comes out. I was looking back at the rainfall for the whole winter, and it's kind of what you expect. There has not been much rain at all. The precipitation numbers are like minuscule, and I think that's a hidden danger, because in the winter people just do not really recognize drought, because they're not gardening, they're not swimming, they're not on the lake, so they don't really notice these things. But if you look at the tea leaves, you look at the water in the lakes, the stream flows, you look at soil moisture, there's a lot of lack of moisture out there. I hope the pattern flips.
Yeah, maybe we get our start on that this weekend with Sunday, but it'll be interesting tomorrow, not just to look at the actual classification of the drought, but, a lot of times, especially the State Climate Service, they'll put out some nice tidbits of information of, yes, it's a severe drought, but here's what that's actually showing, and such river is low, or, the stream flows are low in these areas, or whatever the case may be. We just saw a little bit of a wildfire, I believe, out west that's mostly contained right now. So those are things we're going to have to consider, and we talked a lot about it before winter really got going, that the wildfire risk would be high. We've been pretty lucky, I think, so far not to have too many of those issues, but the longer this keeps going, the more that could continue to be a problem. So we'll see. I would fully expect the drought remains unchanged tomorrow, don't you think?
Yeah, I can't imagine. It didn't improve. We know that. I wonder if it'll expand at all. And it's only going to expand if, like you said, some of those indicators start popping up. Like if more municipalities are like, hey, we got to do voluntary water restrictions, or if we see more wildfire danger start creeping up, which will be interesting. I wanted to show this graphic because I pulled up the entire winter, and this is for Charlotte. I like this because I can color code it and put the numbers on here. But these are the average temperature departure for every day this winter so far. And you can see December started cold, a lot of blue, and then everyone's going to remember the week of Christmas. It was 79 degrees here in Charlotte, warmest Christmas we'd ever had. And it stayed pretty warm through the new year. And then it was all of a sudden about mid-month, the pattern flipped. And yesterday and today were the first days above average for Charlotte since January 23rd. So we had a string of almost 2.5 weeks of below average temperatures. But I did some of the math today, and we ended up plus 0.1 for December. We were negative 0.1 for January. And so far in February, I think we're 6 or 7 degrees below average, but that didn't count today. So I'm really curious what we're going to end up with, because if you think about the pattern next 2 weeks, Tim, if we stay warm, there's a good chance we might end up exactly near average for temperatures, which isn't crazy to think about it. But the other thing I wanted to show were the rainfall. This was the rainfall I was talking about. Just look at some of these numbers. I mean, here in February, nothing. Even January, I mean, we had 2 half-inch amounts. One of those was a snowstorm. The other one was an ice storm. And you look in January, those are small numbers. You're not seeing any significant rainfall. A lot of zeros, a lot of trace. And that is a troubling sign. I always like to say we got to get our winter wet weather and our spring wet weather, or the summers are going to be brutal, because in the summers, you know how it is. It's just pop-up storms if you don't get cold fronts.
You can get in trouble really fast. I think that's super interesting, looking at how the winter is broken down a little bit, kind of month by month, and pretty similar up here for Greensboro. I was just looking this up as well. Our friends over at the Southeast Regional Climate Center, they give us a nice tool where we can kind of look this every step of the way. And so far for the winter in Greensboro anyway, it's been about 3 degrees below average overall, which actually, it doesn't sound like all that much. That is still our coldest start to winter, or I shouldn't say start, but through this point, our coldest winter since 2010, 2011. So it has been a little while up here. Charlotte, it looks like just about 1 degree below average. So it kind of depends area to area. We talked a little bit about the extended forecast and how the long-term trends are going to change a little bit. We can show you now the longer range, as we call it. Here's the extended outlook. This goes through the middle of next week, so thinking about like the 17th through the 21st over the next 6 to 10 days. What this is meant to show you is what are the odds that you're going to be above average or below average. And this is that shift that Brad and I were just mentioning. What we're seeing now is that warmer than average weather is more likely over the east, and cooler than average weather is more likely over the west. And if you go even farther out than this, here's the 8 to 14 day outlook. Same kind of thing. February 19th through the 25th. East Coast, probably going to be above average. West Coast, probably going to be below average. And by and large, our averages this time of year are in the 50s, which is to say winter isn't over necessarily, but it's probably going to be pretty hard to get your snowstorms, your ice storms, your winter disruptions through the rest of the month of February. So if you're a snow lover, hopefully you've enjoyed the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty good for that sort of thing, but it might be a little bit tough the rest of the month of February. If that changes, you know where to find it. We're going to keep you posted right here on Weather Impact Live. That's it for today. We'll be right back here same time tomorrow, coming up on your Thursday with those new drought numbers.